It doesn't have to be boring, it doesn't have to be dry. Throw your cupboard at your curry and see what you can come up with. All right, if you're going to make a solid tomato-based dish, there are some ingredients that you can't do without. For me, tomato puree, salt, pepper, and then I like passata. It's cheap, it's already processed, and you're going to get a great tomato base without having to pay for sauces. To make a great chicken curry, in my humble opinion, these are non-negotiables. I've got some onions through there, which I'm going to chop up, and this would be the essential base. From there, if you really want to have your flavours come through the curry, it's not just a hit in your face, it's something that builds over time and really helps with the sauce. I would then also put some coriander seeds in with the oil, and I'll probably go for some cumin. That to me is the start of a great curry. I always feel when it comes to fresh garlic that I don't ever get through the full bulb in enough time, whereas given that I'm only cooking once or twice a week, having powdered garlic like this still packs a punch and still has your antioxidant benefits, but it won't go off in the same amount of time. So we've got our good curry base here. I then add the chicken and then the puree, then the stock, and stir all of this together before allowing it all to bubble with my passata, and we wash the carton out with water, fill the pot up, as I'll show you, and then leave that to start to reduce for a while. Easy peasy. While the sauce is bubbling, I would then add in things like chili powder, turmeric if I've not already, garam masala, and maybe paprika for some extra flavour and kick. I prefer a smoked paprika, but we're going to work with this one today. If you're wanting to make a ragu, now I've got a little bit of experience with this. So we take the cumin out, take the coriander seeds out, garlic is going to be front and centre, again super tomatoey, don't need that stock anymore, and you may not even need the chicken. I find that actually when it comes to making Italian-like sauces, you just want to make the sauce by itself, and so that's what I would focus on instead. While we have these as our initial base, I would then think about our herbs rather than our spices. So oregano and basil go great with a tomato sauce. You could also put in chili flakes or something like paprika just for a little bit of extra warmth, but it's not what I would rush to. When I think of ragus, I think about thick, deep, rich tomato sauces with that herbier pop, and I would put a rosemary, an oregano, a basil in at the mid stage, but also on top. And if you can get things like fresh basil, oregano from a bush in the garden, then that's obviously going to be ideal. Some other variation that you could go for are just for general stews, in which case it could be more of a mellet. You could go for, again, these things, puree again, stock again. If you're putting beef into your stew, put a beef stock in. If you're putting chicken into your stew, put a chicken stock in. I love a cacciatore, and that would have this base, but then also start to think about the heat again. So we've got our herbs. I'll put these in shot. So when I'm thinking ragus, I'm thinking stews, I'm thinking rich, warm, herby, bubbling for a long time, but I might freestyle a little bit more with some heat. So chili powder would probably go into one of my stews, and I would again go for something like a smoked paprika. You might also experiment with spices a little bit. So cinnamon could be great to add in there. You could even have mixed spice and maybe even some cloves. Some people like cooking with wine. I don't really drink, so I don't have wine in the house necessarily. But again, thinking about these kind of wintry flavours that we can put into a stew that can bubble, get rid of the alcohol, and just add to the flavour of the dish. One last thing that you might do with your cupboard is a shakshuka. I absolutely love a shakshuka as an alternative breakfast idea, and I've got a video on it if you're interested. But the way that I build that is, again, with salt, pepper, and an onion as a base. I would definitely use a tomato puree, and I would definitely have passata. But from there, in the oil, so before you start with the onion frying, I would have some cumin in there, and I would have my paprika. And the smell that you'll get with the oil alone before you start to add your other ingredients is unbelievable. When you start to put your chopped onion in, that smell of the kind of acid with the spices. Oh baby, it's class. So that would be my base, and I would then put something like, yeah, I'll probably go for a basil, and then I would season the eggs while they're going in the pan. I want to shakshuka now. Let's crack on with the curry, and if I can think of anything else while we're cooking, I'll talk you through it. I personally cook with sprays. This one was about £1, I think, from Aldi. It's got a calorie per spray. I don't worry about tracking it because this is going to make about 6 dishes. If you cook with oils and you're on a fat loss plan, then you should pay attention to how many millilitres you're putting in, because oil is so rich in fat. It's not necessarily bad for us, but as part of a fat loss plan, if you find that you're not losing weight, it could be the oil is the first thing that you strip out for something that will cook just as well, and to be honest, not change the flavour that much. I think unless you're in hot cuisine, you don't worry about the difference between spray and oil. And if you are fighting for it and you're not seeing results, you're fighting over the wrong things. So while the oil's heating up, let's prep our onion. I'm just going for half moons, and they add a bit more texture through the dish while still getting that onion flavour. Let's start thinking about our spices at the start, as discussed. So I just want to dust the pan in the spices that I'm going to use. Because we don't have an oil, be careful with it catching and maybe burning a little bit. I'm going for chilli powder, ginger and turmeric in the bottom. Most of the chicken there is on its way to browning. What I'm going to do now is put the puree into the pan and the stock. I don't add any extra water. Other people can do what they want, but you're watching me, so this is my approach to it. Let me know if you give it a go. We'll leave this for about 10-15 minutes on a high heat with the lid on, let it all percolate, and then add whatever flavours we want on top of that. I don't know what it is about hitting 30 and wearing cream, or at least wanting to, but it is such a terrible idea when you're making tomato-based dishes. Nonetheless, we move. This has been bubbling away for about 20 minutes. It's reduced nicely. You can see how much it's come down on the sides. Nice. So we've got a really tasty tomato sauce at the moment. I think that the smoothness of the spice is definitely there. I wouldn't want to add any more paprika to it. There's enough paprika there. Could maybe have it a little bit hotter. So I'm going to go for some chili flakes. Cayenne and paprika, to my taste, are quite similar. But it could help to just round it out a little bit more. We'll go for some garam masala, just to bring the kind of earthiness out of it a little bit. That's going to be it. So when you add spices at this stage, you're more likely to get the feeling as it hits you in the face. Whereas when you put it in with the oil, it blooms through. So it's a little bit more subtle and full-bodied. Hopefully, I've got the combination right. We've not added loads in at this point. It's just to kind of round out the flavour. Right, I'm going to put the lid back on and allow it to reduce again. I am conscious of having not eaten enough vegetables this week. So what I like to do from time to time is put in frozen veg. You can get mixed veg, you can put broccoli in. Aldi sells all of these. I'm just going to put some green beans in there. Give it a little stir, they'll defrost, and just add a little bit more volume to the pan. And some necessary fibre, vitamins and minerals for me. Watch out for that cream hoodie there. That is one meal for today, 5 meals for the rest of the week. Batch cooked and delicious. It doesn't have to be boring, it doesn't have to be dry. Throw your cupboard at your curry and see what you can come up with.